So, because of my footage and camera being corrupted and broken, and basically 3 entire videos worth went down the drain, I couldn't make videos last week. So, I basically ended up watching the first season of True Detective again because I was depressed and sad. And I sort of wanted to talk about it, but found out that if I started writing a video essay on the first season, that video would end up being like an hour long. So I dug up this old video essay instead, because I wanted to write about the second season, and I enjoy, I guess? I won't mince words here. True Detective Season 1 is my favorite television show ever. It's within my top 5 favorite works of fiction ever. I've seen it upwards of 5 times now. Actually, really more like 7 or 8. And I like it more and more every time. It contains everything I love, and it's presented in such a way that its southern gothic and surreal atmosphere connects with me even more than something like this already would. If you've seen it, you know what I mean. And one day I'll make a video about why I love it so damn much. And if you haven't seen it, then fucking get off your ass and go watch it. It's like if Seven was a TV show. It's great. Watch it. Go. Like now. But inevitably, when a creator makes something this fantastic, they set themselves up for disappointment. Everything they make past what is considered their magnum opus could be masterful, but in the eyes of the audience, they may never be able to live up to their previous work. True Detective Season 2 is something that could have never been anything but slightly disappointing to me and to everyone else. But I feel like there's a special case here, because on its own merits, True Detective Season 2 really isn't bad. Hell, it's better than most television shows out there, so that begs the question, why did everybody, myself included, find it to be so disappointing? To the point of almost outright hatred. I find I had a somewhat similar but far less disappointing experience with the TV series of Fargo as well, which for my money is the only thing that can really stand toe-to-toe with True Detective in terms of crime fiction. Season 1 was incredible. Season 2 was, well, also incredible, maybe slightly less so, just for different reasons. I ended up liking the first season more, and the third season is like the best fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. But it shows the creators are beyond capable of maintaining a streak of what makes their creations so good. And in terms of shows that went off the rails, True Detective doesn't have it nearly as bad as shows like Dexter or, God forbid, Sherlock. But even though the second season wasn't a tragic misfire, I've slowly grown to dislike it more and more because of how astonishingly apathetic I was while watching it. I would have almost preferred it to be a disaster because it would have done a better job at holding my interest. Instead, I'm left with a show that I've seen twice now and can barely remember what happened in it because I was just so uninvolved. So, why is that? Why is Season 2 still kind of a decent show, yet I slowly finding myself hating it because of how it's just short of being actually good enough to stand alongside its predecessor? Here I'll attempt to analyze exactly why True Detective Season 2 is simultaneously pretty alright, and why it makes me hate it all the more only for being pretty alright. Number 1! Production history! Okay, so this is not actually as complicated or as messy as you might think that it is. It's sort of a well-known thing that the production of this show was kind of dodgy, but I can't really find a specific singular reason as to why that is, but upon doing a little bit of research, here's what I found. So, Cary Fukunaga, the Beasts and No Nations guy, directed every episode of the first season, which is sort of rare in TV because usually every episode has a different director just because it's a lot of work, so I think that's why the first season was so cohesive. It was under capable supervision and consistent vision. Take a look at Season 2 now. We have a plethora of directors, not itself a bad thing, but definitely explains the more inconsistent quality. Hell, in the show, there's actually a dig at Fukunaga, who was only a producer in the second season, and it's in the form of a director of a shitty movie being made by the people who killed Casper. All of that, and apparently the show's writer-creator Nick Pizzolatto and Fukunaga had creative differences and a falling out, on top of which HBO picked up the first season of True Detective after Pizzolatto had spent like 3 years or something writing the damn thing, and it was so successful that it gave Pizzolatto 1 year to conjure up the second season, so he had way less time, and in my opinion spread himself way too thin. A bunch of high-profile directors like David Cronenberg and Andrew Dominic were approached to direct this, but they all turned it down because, and I quote, "the script was just bad." Why on earth wasn't this taken as a bad sign on HBO's part? They should have allowed Nick more time to refine and tweak the story rather than demanding he crank it out like a machine. So that's why a plethora of directors attached to the show, which in television doesn't always matter as much as it does in film, but definitely still plays a factor. It's why every episode of Mr. Robot directed by Sam Esmail is like fucking amazing. amazing. So we got some talent in the second season. The final 3 episodes, for my money, the best 3 episodes, directed by the guy who did Brooklyn, a regular director of Game of Thrones, and a guy who directed some episodes of The Wire. But conversely, we had the master of mediocrity himself, Justin Lin, the director of such masterpieces as Furious 7, who made the first 2 episodes, which are easily the 2 worst episodes of the entire show, both seasons included. So all in all, it just wasn't as tight, as cohesive, or as well put together as the first season from square one. Number 2, the character dynamics fucking blow. They aren't as good as the first one. So like, the first season of True Detective is genius when it comes to character dynamics. Not even just with the main 2, Marty and Russ, but with the side characters as well. You understand who these people are, why they are the way they are, and how they interact with one another because of this. Every single action is informed, and done so with subtlety. Like, halfway through the season, where Marty shoots Ledoux in that episode where they first find the kidnapped kids, you understand that this action is motivated by the fact that Marty is a self-proclaimed family man, and he has a weakness when it comes to children, and he has a short temper. So him killing Ledoux is actually pretty expected. But notice that Russ barely even reacts to this. They don't have an argument or a conversation, Russ doesn't even protest it at all, and he proceeds to shoot the other witness. Why? Because he immediately understands that Marty's reason for killing Ledoux was a reason that would drive him to want to see him dead as well, and they both cover it up as an act of self-defense. The show doesn't highlight this, and it isn't really well emphasized, it's just informed well. You know, subtle. So the characters and dynamics in season 2, they are, they're pretty boring, mostly. See, there's potential with these people. In fact, some of that potential is fulfilled. I actually really like Vince Vaughn's character and how he ends up dying. It's really tragic and well-handled, and I think if the show had honed in on this plotline and, quite frankly, picked a better actor, it would have been great. I like Bezarides a lot. I think she's funny and seems to be the only character with any legit personality, but the show wastes her by doing approximately one interesting but ultimately pointless thing with her. More on that later. Colin Farrell's issues with his son are, on paper, kind of compelling, but end up meaning very little, and his character just sort of has this really unsatisfactory ending in the name of just having this really, like, gritty death. Yeah, characters dying can add to a show's bleakness, but if you just kill important characters without a reason other than because sad, it's kinda hollow. However, no one is as bad as Taylor Kitsch. Good fucking god, what a waste. I may have more mixed to negative thoughts on this show than outright negative ones, but this element is just beyond salvage. Why the fuck is he here? Why the fuck am I supposed to care? He's an asshole to his girlfriend, he's an asshole to his mother's an asshole to him, he's an asshole to the guys that he sleeps with, and Kitsch's acting is so fucking wooden. I get nothing from this guy at all. His whole controversy with the lady who's like trying to sue him, fucking snore. He's boring and ultimately serves to die, and because of his tragic death, he doesn't even serve the plot well. I was relieved when they put a bullet in him, because it meant that the show would stop wasting my fucking time. The relationships in season 2 are almost non-existent. Hell, they don't even really interact much. Vaughn and Farrell have an interesting history, but yeah, that's it. History. It's in flashbacks. McAdams and Farrell have some decent interactions, but nothing comes from any of this. We don't find out anything about these people through the characters. Rust and Marty brought out the worst in each other, but also pushed themselves to be better at what they did, more driven to see justice done. That's what makes it so compelling. The characters in season 2 all just sorta happen to be kind of interspersed throughout the same event. All of their endings are separate from one another as well. Vaughn dies alone. Farrell dies alone. McAdams ends up in the middle of fucking nowhere with Vaughn's girlfriend. Kitsch is dead before he does anything at all. It's a whole lot of parts that just don't connect well. Number 3, the constant stupid exposition about the land and construction shit that nobody cares about. Okay, seriously, who thought the construction shit was interesting? Honest to God, I can barely tell you what the actual components of the mystery were in the first season, because it was so focused on its characters that the plot was sort of secondary to them. And the show is a character study, so that's fine. However, this fucking Chinatown subplot takes up like half the time of the episodes, and it's mostly through Vince Vaughn's character, the one with the least development and intrigue. They just keep talking about this conspiracy, and I could not be paid to give a fuck, because there is no emotional investment at all. You care about the case in the first season because the 2 characters are invested in it, and the case itself starts out as a really disturbing serial murder that's easy to understand. This shit is like land deals and business acquisitions and profit shares and I don't care. And this plagues so much of the show because it has to bend over fucking backwards to explain it all, and it doesn't need to. Which brings me to number 4. Nothing fucking happens in the first 4 episodes. Seriously, why didn't the show just start at the end of episode 4? Half of this show is irrelevant. It starts off with the 2 worst episodes of the show, which, again, aren't bad. Because of the technical aspects, it's slightly above average. But the first 4 episodes, everything that precedes the huge gunfight at the end of episode 4, none of it is necessary. Imagine this. Imagine if it began with the gunfight. We open in on it en media res, and the rest of the show deals with how each character was connected to it, what led them to it, and how they deal with the aftermath. No major developments are made before this. Any inconsequential details could be given via flashback if necessary, but it would have made the show feel less bloated and boring in the first half. Good production values can only get you so far. In fact, I'd go as so far to say if you haven't seen the first season, skip the first 4 episodes entirely. Maybe watch the gunfight and everything afterwards. You may be slightly confused with some of the finer points, but honestly, I was so uninvested in the first part, I didn't much care to pay attention to those points. Even then, a good amount of the show could still be cut out. Number 5. The horribly written Bezarides sexual harassment meeting at the start of episode 5. Okay, this is kind of small, but it's sort of a representation of a greater whole that I have as an issue with the show. Bezarides is funny, and she's a good enough character that this part didn't bug me too much, but I still gotta talk about this because it's just such an obvious example of shitty writing. Bezarides' character is in a sexual harassment course in one episode that she was placed in, and she was placed in like kind of unfairly, and just some of the writing here is so fucking juvenile and stupid and tone deaf. I am shocked it's in the same series as the first season.
But, I don't know. I mean, what can I say? I just really like big dicks.
What the fuck?
Yeah. It's not just length. Everybody's always talking length, but it's fine. I mean, girth. Girth. Too. I really want to have trouble handcuffing the thing, like.
I'm not sure. You know, that might be taken.
What? Is that you wanted me to share? This is a safe circle, right?
Oh, yes, it is.
Hey, let her share, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, these guys are so stupid, and the dialogue is so stereotypical, it feels like I'm watching a fucking Judd Apatow comedy. Again, Bezarides is a cool character who shrugs off these comments in, like, a pretty humorous way, but it's so needless, it's so sloppy and amateurish and has nothing to do with the rest of the show, and it takes you out of the world and atmosphere that the rest of it wants to build. There weren't any moments like this in the first season where I was like, oh wow, that was really fucking dumb. And this is hardly the only time in which it happens. But again, because of the subject matter and how it's handled without any tact, I feel that this scene in particular stands out, even though it's really not that long. The biggest problem, epilogue. Nothing connects, it's less than the sum of its parts. The worst part about the show is that it's just not the well-oiled machine that you'd expect after watching the first season. It's a bunch of stories and people that are pseudo-tangential and kind of mimics the style of the first season, but even then, it's a pale imitation, like a corporate sellout version of what my idea of the show was. Good stories have elements that complement each other, and here it's, well, it's a story alright. Again, I really wouldn't classify it as bad. The last 3 episodes are actually pretty good. Not season 1 good, but good because they show that there were at least nuggets of good ideas in this show, and they get some form of payoff now that all the bullshit's out of the way. So now we're on the road to season 3, and honestly, everything looks like it's gonna be in top form again. I don't think you can ever get something quite as good as season 1, but, you know, we'll see. So, for those of you who are wondering, is season 2 even worth your time? If you like the first season, I don't know, maybe? Like, again, I can't emphasize this enough, it's not completely worthless. I'd still skip at least part of it, but there's obvious talent at play. If you just need more of this kind of show or story and absolutely cannot wait until whenever season 3 hits, maybe watch this, but go watch the 3 seasons of Fargo instead. All of them are good, and it's the same kind of story with the same sort of appeal, just with its unique style and story, and Season 3 is pretty much the only thing that compares to Season 1 of True Detective, in my humble opinion. So, seek out stuff of similar tone and style rather than this, and hopefully, when the new season arrives, I'll be saying how good it is instead of how messy it is. You know, I go back and forth, hating it and being indifferent to it, but at the end of the day, it's a mistake. And I think HBO has somewhat learned and paid attention to the criticisms that's been leveled towards the show. Let's hope that we can get more of what we love, and a whole lot less of what we don't give a shit about.